when you see people like you
Yes, yes.
having done things that you want to do or you dream of doing,
It's really important, actually. Yeah.
and then you say, huh, maybe it's possible, but how do I get it done now? Right? That's the second stage. Now you've reached this.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Marca Del Rios every week as we learn how others had the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life.
Welcome to the 10X for Gen XYZ podcast. I'm Zach Winter.
And I'm Marca Del Rios.
And today we're thrilled to have Satish Shenoy as our special guest. Satish is a renowned entrepreneur, investor, and business strategist who has built and scaled multiple successful ventures in the tech and healthcare sectors. He's also a sought-after mentor and advisor for startups and has helped dozens of companies grow and succeed. In this episode, we'll dive into Satish's journey from his early days as a computer science student to his current role as a leader in the startup ecosystem. We'll also talk about his decision to run 7 marathons in each of the world's 7 continents, the lessons he learned, and the insights he gained and applied to entrepreneurship, innovation, and leadership. Welcome to the show, Satish. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Zach. Delighted to be here. I couldn't be more happier to be.
Excellent.
Let's before I get into the story about your decision to run 7 marathons on each of our 7 continents, let's step back for a minute and briefly tell us about your background and how you got started and how that led to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I grew up in India, Bangalore, India, a small village. I joke around that it was a small village, but if you guys know Bangalore, it's like the tech hub of India. A lot going on. But when I grew up there, it was a much smaller city. So I grew up surrounded by technology quite a bit, believe it or not, and as the youngest of four boys. So a lot of action in the household, for sure. Getting into things that we had no business getting into. But then that's where I think I had a sense of adventure and the rebel in me, right? As the youngest of 4, I always was the rebel, trying to get attention, trying to do things that I probably shouldn't have done in some cases, but who's watching, right? Then about just after college, after engineering, I went got an electrical engineering degree. Then after college, I got an admission to Michigan State. So think about moving from balmy Bangalore to the frozen tundra of Michigan. I've never seen snow in my life. Like I don't even know what snow looks like. And so I get there thinking, oh my God, what is this? This white stuff that's falling from the sky. And it's since then it's always this sense of adventure that I always had. I've traveled to nearly 50 plus countries across all 7 continents, done business in nearly 40 of them, lived in 4 countries across 2 continents. So life has been a big adventure for me. And if all that was not enough, as my wife likes to say, I can't sit still. That's my problem, if there is one. And so she said, why did you pick running, right, of all things? And it's not like I look like one of those, thin,
right, wiry runners.
Bodies. Yeah. Not a runner's body, right? But still, it's something that I always had in mind that, you probably relate to this. You go through life, there's a lot of excitement in the beginning, there's adventure, you're doing stuff on your own. And then you get married, you settle down, you have kids, which is all great, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of hit a plateau of sorts. Then you feel stuck and you think, oh my God, what am I doing, right? Where's me? It's your identity is kind of starts to get lost. And that's where I think I said, I've always been wanting to run a marathon. And somebody told me, I think it was Christmas 2011, somebody told me that I didn't have what it took to run a marathon. The guy was drunk. So when you're drunk, people, I've learned that people tell you the truth to some extent because they're no inhibitions, right? Anyway, so he tells me that, and I'm like, nope, this is the time. I've got to do it.
How old were you?
I was 42.
42. Okay. And had you been exercising at that point in your life?
Not much, right? Maybe a hike once in a while. When you have younger kids, you
Sure.
tend to focus on them and what they need. And so you kind of adjust, right? So I've been, at that point, I'd not been doing much, right? The most
Were you in sports in high school or college?
Not at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Not at all. Look at, here's the interesting, and this might be controversial even. How many medals do people from India win at the Olympics? Do you know?
No idea.
Not many, right? It's not a country that's been focused on sports as a way to get ahead. It's really been very intellectually oriented, right? Growing up, we've always been told that, hey, if you don't, do well in school, you will become a cobbler. I remember my dad actually passed away when I was writing the book in 2022. He used to, take us in his car and say, point to, in India, there are cobblers who sit in these metal boxes, and that's where they live, actually, not just work, but live. So it's a really miserable existence, actually. I hate to say, but he would say, if you don't study, this is who you'll become.
Yeah.
And so, that was more motivation enough, I guess. So anyway, and then one marathon, I had a tough time doing San Francisco,
Very hilly.
so wise that I picked one of the hardest marathons to start my journey.
Yeah.
And
What
then
was it? Was that a 5K, 10K? How long
no,
was it?
it was a full marathon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did Oakland half before that, but still, to pick the hardest marathon, the full marathon there is, one of the hardest, was.
Did you finish?
I did. And
What was your time? Do you remember your time?
4:25.
That's pretty good.
I would never
4:25.
forget
So that
that.
was like a 8-something minute mile.
Yeah, just around 10 minutes, right?
Okay.
Which was phenomenal for me at the time, right?
Yeah.
Especially after I tell people I didn't think I would finish, because at mile 18, I had cramps in both legs.
Yep.
And I was thinking, what idea was this?
Yeah, I ran LA Marathon back in 98, 99, and right around mile 18, felt like a little monkey was hitting my leg with a mallet every step I took. Right. So for like 3 miles, to just like bang, bang, bang.
Wow.
Yeah. So
now was your first marathon, was it kind of a run walk? Did you kind of take your time?
No, actually, at that point, when you're younger, you think run walk is for losers. I mean, I'm saying this, and that's exactly what I do now. But it's like, oh no, gung ho, I'm gonna go run all the way. You're not wise for your age. I think I'm speaking about myself. You think, oh, run, I have to run all the way, right? But you realize as you get wiser and older that actually run walks works better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can actually do faster races that way. Right.
It's really interesting to me about running, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, proficient at it, but I do like it. And it's almost as if for me, it's like I have other exercises to do, but I can't quit running. And I know it's highly impactful on my body.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit overweight in some instances. And so, but I can't give it up. And there's something about it that I have a little bit of it's a jujitsu background, but I liken it to wrestling as well. There's a mentality that goes along with it. And sometimes when I'm running, there's something about, there's an accomplishment thing
Mm.
for some reason.
A high. You get a high.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
that.
runner's high.
And also I have a background from smoking too. And so if I'm able to run right now, I'm up to about 5-6 miles, something like that is my daily kind of, or every other day. And, but like being able to kind of finish that and go, man, I reflect on how I used to be a smoker 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I can do this when I would never have thought that because I was smoking a pack a day, who knows what damage I did, but like, it's pretty incredible to me. And so I keep those little markers for myself,
Yeah, no, very true.
Interesting.
And this incremental achievement, right? You do one and then you start thinking, that was not so bad. At the time you run, like you were saying, Zach, at mile 18, you're feeling like shit. And you're like, why did I do this?
Right.
Why do I subject myself?
Did they have beer at mile 20 or 21?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did at LA too.
In fact, people are outside the bars. The San Francisco Marathon run goes through the city.
Yeah.
And there are people outside the bars kind of holding beer and tempting you, saying, hey, why don't you?
I actually just saw this thing about a lot of finance kids do this in New York. They call it a beer mile. Have you heard of that before?
No, it's that.
So I guess you're running a mile, but it's a lap around, but every lap you got to chug 1 or 2 beers or something like that.
For a marathon?
Well, okay, so I follow this kid. I forget his name, but I follow this kid on LinkedIn, and he's going through school, but he was applying at Goldman Sachs to be a young analyst investment banker. Yeah. And one of the things that the new CEO of Goldman Sachs was doing was changing up the way that they would do the final interviews. Yeah. And one of the things that he was saying that that Friday nights for young analysts, at these investment banking firms, by the time you get to say midnight on a Friday night, that's when your calls and your texts come in from your managing director saying, get your ass down to the office. You need to finish up this deck, in 3 hours or whatever it is. Yeah. But you're already, you've already been at the bar for 3 or 4 hours drinking. And so this kid's like, I'm going to hack this and I'm going to practice running, drinking a beer. And, and so that when I'm doing my final interview, and I get that, I will be able to win. And actually he did. He was like, he learned how to be able to run back from the bar to the office, 2 miles and actually work, 5 sheets to the.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So when did you do your first marathon? How many years ago was it?
2012.
2012. Okay.
So 2020 was I finished 2019. I finished all 7.
Okay. So you did your first one, felt good. When did you decide, hey, I'm gonna do, I heard about this thing where where you can do a marathon on every continent, and I want to do that. When did that come into play?
So it's a funny story, right? Like most things, it's all happenstance and destiny kind of. I believe in some of that. I remember somebody telling me about 7 continents, 7 marathons. So I asked my friend Google about it, and I come across this beautiful story about this lady who ran 7 marathons across 7 continents in 7 days.
7 days. That's insane.
And here's the drop the mic. And she was 70 years old.
Wow.
And I was thinking, if she can do it, what's my excuse? Can I do it in 7 years even? She
well, you have to have some money and to be able to coordinate it in 7. Like you're chartering a jet, you're going in the right path around the globe.
Yeah, that's right.
Take advantage of the time change.
Money is one thing, right, Zach? But it's also the will that you have, the mindset you have.
Yeah.
to actually do it. Even people with a lot of money can't do that just because they simply don't have the will or the mindset, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so I look at this and I'm thinking, if she can do it, and I tell my wife, if she can do it, I think I can too.
Yeah.
And my wife turns to me, she says, hang on, so 7 continents, that means Antarctica, right? Antarctica. And are you saying you want to run in Antarctica? I said, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that? Was that one of your first? Was that in the middle? One of the
No,
first?
it was the end. I wanted to keep
Very
it
end.
towards the end. And in fact, if you want to go there, you have to put yourself on a wait list because there's only like limited number of travel outfits that do it.
Right.
So there are 2 marathons in Antarctica, um, each at the shoulder season of the summer. So I think one is November, the other is March, something like that. And there are 2 different marathons. One of them is by ship, the other one is by plane.
Wow.
Right?
And so
The
did
ship
they have you
one,
stage in like Chile? You stage in Chile for a day
yeah.
or two?
Actually, you fly to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world, right? It's at the tip of Argentina.
Yes.
So you go to Buenos Aires. That's what at least we did. You fly into Buenos Aires, and then you acclimatize a little bit, time zone, etc. And then you fly to Ushuaia, which is another 3.5 hours from Buenos Aires. And then in my case, I took a ship. It was a Russian icebreaker
Yes.
that because they only have a few of these throughout the world, right? These icebreaker ships. You take that across the Drake Passage, which is one of the worst water bodies in the world, known for. I was showing Zach some pictures the last time. It's just amazing how rough it can get. 15-20 foot waves.
Wow.
Kind of really pushing you around, right? So you do that. You run 2 days. You get there. The 3rd day you run, and then for 11 days you kind of drift around Antarctica, and then come back.
Did you have any polar bear? There are polar bears down south, right?
Not in Antarctica, right? It's only in the Arctic. So thankfully, that was. By the way, it's interesting you asked that, Mark, because that was one of my wife's first questions. Are there polar?
Well, because I forget the exact thing, but it's like, black bear.
Yeah, you run
Roll
brown
up.
bear. You
Brown, and polar bear, you're dead. Basically polar bears, they're just gonna eat you no matter what.
No, I was telling her, here's the thing. Remember, I have to be only as fast as the slowest person.
That's
Or
right. Just faster than the slowest.
I don't know, because if you have some good scent on you, they might bypass that slowest person. Be like, he smells good. I don't know.
Yeah, lots of penguins, billions of them. I will say it is one of those life-changing experiences, right? Going to Antarctica and seeing that beauty. In fact, most people who have read the book will say the best chapter in this book, the most memorable one, is the one on Antarctica. I think it struck me the most, and maybe that's why I had to reach deep inside to kind of get something out of me about it. But I mean, at some point, if you want, I can read a first paragraph from that chapter. It's really interesting place, right? Beautiful place.
So, so you saved that for last. So how many years did it take you to do all 7?
7 years.
7 years. Okay, so you did 1 a year.
Yeah, I did more than one a year, but my goal was to do all 7 continents in 7 years.
Excellent.
And got that done. So I did Europe the second year. I did Australia, and then Asia, and on and on, right? Last 2 were the toughest. Africa, and funny enough, I had looked at
what countries did you run through in Africa?
Africa, ran South Africa. I was originally thinking of running in Zimbabwe, Zambia, that border. There's Victoria Falls, I think it is. It's on that border. And I'm looking into booking travel. And then I find out that there was a coup.
There's a coup. Oh, you're like, I ain't going there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And my wife says, no, you're not going there.
yeah.
There's no
Tell-
way. Right?
So are these do you have a running partner or do you have a team that you run with? Like what how do you yeah, or are you a solo kind of adventurer in on
So
these?
I do enjoy running solo, but I will say the big reason that I was able to do all this is because I talk about this. It takes a village, right? And it's true, I think, especially for running. And people ask me, why is that? Well, because one, you can, you get inspired by people running around you, right? And there are people who have done it, been there, done that kind of, so they give you advice. Here's my reason also, right? I'd be sleeping, let's say, and it's raining outside. It's a Saturday morning. It's early. It's 5 a.m. And I'm thinking, no, I want to go back to bed. But then
Yeah.
I think, shoot, there are people waiting for me.
Mm,
Yep.
At that trail, they will kill me if I don't show up because, a few other people decided to show up because I was going to show up,
interesting.
right? And the funny thing is, you get to the trail and they say, "Oh, I was really hoping you wouldn't show up because I didn't want to show up either, right?" Because of the,
Maybe that's a way to get some of these young people back into the office.
yeah, exactly.
It's a
So,
little bit of that peer, you know.
Yeah, I
And
had that experience too. I used to do triathlons, but I had a group of guys that we used to, do road bicycling,
Mm,
and it was just a handful of guys, and because of that, if we had scheduled rides like on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and you had to get up and show up, and if you didn't, you better have a good reason why you didn't show up because your friends are showing up to ride,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there was much more of a like commitment involved. Than I also ran with a big running group out in the LA area called the Basin Blues, and there, it was a large group, so it really didn't matter whether or not I showed up for that large group, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like there are four ways to show up. I talk about this with my team also at work, right? Zach, when you introduced me, you said how you relate this to entrepreneurship and work, right?
Yeah.
After I ran these marathons, I started training young people, right? 5 to 15. So the first year we trained 5 people. I trained 5 people. Then next year, 15 people showed up. This was all volunteer, right, guys? The third year, before I left California and moved to Texas, 53 kids showed up.
Wow.
And we were all training them for a race and so on. And then this whole idea of showing up came to my mind then, right? Because some people show up just to kind of, you see this in company meetings, actually. Some people would show up, just they're spectators.
Mhm.
They're not engaged, they're not
Yeah.
involved. They're there, they'll show up, they'll be on mute most of the time, and then they'll disappear, right? The next person, next kind of showing up is where they not only show up, they're prepared, right? They might be better prepared, they know a little
Yeah.
bit about what's going on.
Yep.
The third kind of showing up is, you're not only showing up, you're prepared, you show up on time, you're prepared, and then you're also engaged, right? You're saying, I'll take on actions from this meeting or whatever, right?
Right.
You're fully immersed in it, right?
Mhm.
And the last one is all these things, these types of showing up, but also showing up for somebody else. Why do I bring that up, right? Because when I show up and how I show up will impact the other people that are showing up. Not just me, right? There's some things I can do well, but I should also keep in mind that my showing up is impacting others, right? So
Right.
when we train those kids, they would always be watching everything that I do, right? Think of a 5-year-old to a 15-year-old. They're watching my mannerisms, they're watching my language, they're looking at what we are doing and what we are not doing.
Right. Right.
It's really interesting how showing up can mean different things, right? And how you show up can.
Well, and
Just
the difference between that last example and the second to last is the second to last, you're showing up, but more for yourself, and you're putting
Yeah.
forth effort more for yourself. But the ultimate in showing up is not just doing it for yourself, but doing it to help others in the group as well.
Yeah, recognizing that, right? And recognizing that and being deliberate about it.
Right.
Recognizing, hey, I'm showing up not just for me. I might do my job well, but I'm showing up for all of these. And especially with young children. I mean, peers is one thing, but or colleagues is one thing, but that it also makes a difference there. But with kids, it's even more striking, I think.
Really interesting. What are some of the other kind of lessons or insights that you gained from your training and doing these that you can apply to
Yes.
business?
So I was thinking about the time when I first heard about the Antarctic Marathon, right? And when you hear, and this happens to you also as an entrepreneur, I think, having worked at both early and late stage startups, and guided several of them. When entrepreneurs solve hard challenges, because if they're not, anybody can do it,
Mhm.
right? So when you hear of a hard challenge, I remember thinking of Antarctica, for example. I remember hearing, oh, you can run a marathon in Antarctica, or there is a marathon. What's your first reaction? It's not for me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right.
Every single person I've said that I ran a marathon in Antarctica would say, that's nuts. I didn't even know it existed.
Right.
Right? So that's the first reaction I had, thinking, no, this is not for me. This is for
Right.
those elite athletes who have those wiry bodies that, they know how to do this. They can manage that environment they're in, right? Not for me. So this mindset, there's a transformation that takes place. The first step in that transformation is you say, this is not for me. It's for somebody else. Step one, right?
Yep.
Step two is where you start saying, you start looking around you and you say, that person ran the marathon. Some friend's friend ran
Mhm.
Antarctica, and they connect. This happened to me, right? Somebody connected me to somebody, some friend's friend that had run.
Right.
And so I'm speaking to this person, and he says, it's not that bad. It's, you just have to train and all that. So you start thinking, maybe it's possible.
Was it important for that step? Was it important that that person was more like you and less like the normal runner or whatever?
That's right.
Is that the credibility part that kind of clicked in for you?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Mark, that's exactly what happens, right? When you see people like you
Yes. Yes.
having done things that you want to do or you dream of doing,
It's really important, actually. Yeah.
and then you say, maybe it's possible, but how do I get it done now, right? That's the second stage. Now you've reached the
Mhm.
second stage. The third and final stage is you give it a shot. You say, okay, I know Antarctica is, very hilly, there is, you could get seasick because you're getting there in 2 days, on a ship, right? You take all 2 days to get there. So let me give it a shot. Let me run to account for all that. Let me run, instead of 22 miles, let me run 30 miles. You start doing things that conditions you for that kind of running, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And-
Both
and then-
mentally and physically.
mentally and physically. And then you think, looks like it's possible.
Yeah.
Now it's inevitable, right? You go from, as I say in my book, actually, I love this quote, and I have to say this at this time. This is a perfect time to bring it up. It's Christopher Reeve, who said, there are 3 stages, right? So many of our dreams first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, And then when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable.
Mm.
So you go from impossible, can't do this, right? To improbable, oh, I don't know, maybe, to inevitable.
Yeah, I love that. Inevitability. I love that. There's an intention behind, not only recognizing that it's inevitable, but being seated in that kind of place of power, when you don't have to force it on anybody, I've prepared. This is where my arrow is pointed. It's happening. Here we go.
Yeah. No, in fact, as entrepreneurs, I think anybody who's an entrepreneur faces this impossible, improbable, inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, I'm sure you consult with some of your entrepreneurs who are really struggling. Was there any like in your path to doing 7 marathons on 7 continents, was there a point in time, either during a race or at some point in time, completing all 7 where you're just like on the verge of quitting, it was just too much? And how'd you overcome it? And is there like a lesson learned there that you apply and help your entrepreneurs?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And if I said anything else, it would be not true, right? That I didn't feel like giving up.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like quitting. That's the truth. It happened to me a number of times, right? So I remember this first marathon. We were talking earlier about mile 18, and I'm thinking, there's no way. There's no way at all that I can make it to the finish line, because there's 8 miles left. What am I going to do? 8 miles at 10 minutes a mile? That's like almost 80 minutes, 90 minutes of running. I was like, no, there's no way. I can't do this, right? And so at that point, the lesson I'll give you, but what's interesting is this woman stops right next to me. She says, "What's going on, son? Are you okay?" Because I'm standing hunched over on the side of the road. Zach, you probably recognize this, right? You're standing on the side of the road thinking, there's no way, right? And then she comes to me. She says, "Can I give you a little bit of advice?" And I said, "Any advice is great. Tell me." And she gives me 2 salt tablets. And it's nice parallels to entrepreneurship, but she gives me 2 salt tablets to get over that cramping.
Yeah.
But she says something that changed how I looked at things forever. She said, "Just think of that next step. That's it. That's all I want you to do. One step. Don't think of the finish line. Don't think of anything else. Just one step. One step. Keep taking that one step at a time." And she said, I mean, it sounds so simple now. She says, she told me, one step, you keep doing that, I
Yep.
guarantee you get to the finish line.
Yeah.
So think about it. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. It's absolutely true.
It's really a lesson about being present and not worrying about the future and worrying about how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And being in the marathon, being so present that it's just one step, like that present, just taking each step at a time.
Again,
Yeah, I tell entrepreneurs this also, right? That I have friends that have entrepreneurs, I've advised entrepreneurs. I tell them, just think about that one next step. Don't worry about this big dream you have. Got it, right? You need that for direction, but just think about what you want to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Mark.
No, I was just going to say that in some ways, especially with running, but this probably applies in other areas. Although I do like the strategy of chunking things down, right? Being able to back into your solution by going, okay, here's where I'm at. All I need is, it's an 8-minute mile, so 90 minutes left, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Or 10-minute mile, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In the middle of running, though, if you're actually running,
Yeah.
like I found trying to chunk away, like sometimes I'm 3/4 of the way in and I know I got to get there. And I'm just like, and I'm run walking and I'm like, oh man, I just got to pick it up, man. Come on. Like actually what has actually helped me, I don't know what it's not really zoning out, but it is working on the first step, but something clicks in where I might start wandering.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm, a quarter mile down the road and I snap back and go, oh crap. Okay. That's great. But when I try to like calculate in my mind as I'm like, there's no way that I just want to quit right there. I just want to stop, like Uber home. Right?
It's a great story, actually. That's true, right? That's what intimidates you. That's what causes you to get overwhelmed, right? Where you're thinking too many things. I was reading this recently. Marathon des Sables, I think it's in the desert. It's one of the hardest marathons in the world, right?
Yeah.
Ultras in the world. And the guy who's been successful many times says, I always think in 15-minute chunks. If I can get 15 minutes done, 15 minutes, I keep thinking, I just want to get 15 minutes. And that's it, right? So I would also keep an eye on, mile. I just got 1 mile done. That's all I care about. I want to get to the next mile. That's it. It's a beautiful, a dermatologist who was a reader of mine, he reached out recently and he said, I love how simple it is, yet it's so, because he's helping other entrepreneurs, doctors that are entrepreneurs. And he said, I love it. And he actually asked for my permission to use these. I have these 2 pictures that show on the one side, a marathoner's journey, and on the other side, and the entrepreneur's journey, and how similar they are, right? There's so much similarity.
So true. It's really interesting. So we have the name of our show. It's 10X for Gen XYZ, and that 10X thing, at least the way that it's kind of been put out into the world the last few years of this just exponential growth or explosion of growth or stuff like that. And that's, for the most part, there's a lot of, validity to that.
Yeah.
But there's also kind of a 10X aspect to kind of putting your head down and really almost, I don't want to use the word, but sometimes it's like grinding it out. Do you know what I mean? And knowing that you have a marathon in front of you, and knowing that if I just put my head down and I just move forward and I finish this thing, no bullshit, right? Just that the end part of it is the 10X.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the end part of that is your 10X. The going through it step by step, you may not notice that part of it.
Yeah.
But there's something really kind of powerful in being able to hook into yourself. And, we hear it all the time, commitment and stuff like that. But just head down, 1 foot after another, every 15 minutes, every mile, just whatever it is, just keep on.
Well, and it's also being willing to put in the time and the effort without necessarily seeing the results, right? Because it's not a sprint, it can be a marathon in that sense. So like I had a business coach who told me it's like you're at a water pump and you're pumping and you're pumping and you're pumping and nothing's coming out. And like right before you're ready to give up, I mean, the water could be that close to the top. You just don't see that it's slowly coming up. So you just got to keep pumping and pumping and pumping away. And then eventually you'll get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great lesson for all of us, right? In terms of, by the way, the other thing that actually comes to mind is your community, right? The lessons you have learned in preparing for the marathon. I remember one of the, when I was running in San Francisco, one of the guys who was in the group, his name is Prasanna. The very first time I ran, I remember him, I was coming up this hill and he said, pump your arms, right? Pump your arms really hard and your legs will follow. By the way, that's the secret. That's the secret of running hills. Just pump your arms because your legs will follow. And I'm thinking, that's crazy. What do arms have got to do with legs, right? Pump your legs. That makes sense to me. But pump your arms. So the reason I bring that up is when you're in a tight spot, right? And you feel like you're going to give up because you're coming up to this hill. And that's a
Mhm.
really nice metaphor for entrepreneurship. You're coming up this hill. Remember the lesson, pump your arms.
Right.
Right? I remember that because even in Antarctica, I was showing Zach, we had this trail that was artificially shortened for some weird reason. And, it was up and down 3,000 feet. And you had to go on those hills, right? The problem is not the hills themselves. It's the fact that you're running in Antarctica. You're like, oh my God, how could I be running here? It's mental, right?
Crazy.
You've
That's-
done harder races, but it's all up here. It's all in the mind.
Yeah, it's very true. Like I'm really really, I love all of the business aspects, about what we do in our real lives, but I'm really into this, the mental aspect of what it is that we do. And because it really is true. I don't know if it's an 80-20 thing, but it really is true that there's a big, huge part of the game for all of us that's mental, um, at every single stage,
Yeah, Zach, I don't know if you have found this, right? Since you're a runner and both of you are runners, right? So it was interesting. Every time you would tell yourself, hey, I'm going to run 5 miles today.
Hmm.
As you approach 4.5, your mind is saying, no, it's time to stop.
Mm.
You told yourself it's 5.
I would like, it depended, like if I break down my workouts, you're always looking to like PR mentally. You're like, I want a PR, I want a PR, but it's a fraction of your workouts where you're actually PRing. It's maybe 10% of the time
Yeah.
you're doing better than you've done before. And maybe 40% of the time you're about even kill, you're doing good, you're not really improving, and the other is you're just feeling crappy, but you're getting out there and you're doing it and you're working through, and and it's important to do that, and that builds the rigor and the strength and determination to complete things that I think you can apply to the business world.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I felt good though, when I'm exercising, I feel sometimes I just, man, that workout felt great. Or, like if I was doing a distance run day on the weekend,
Yeah.
and, I'd have like a 14-mile run.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just finished it and just felt great, all the way through. And then other times it was a grind to finish, and there was some walking involved or whatever.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's interesting that also, there are so many marathons in our life, not just running, right? When I wrote the book, people asked me, was that harder than running the marathon? I tell them it was 10 times harder.
Yeah.
10x, right? Talk of 10x.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think about writing the book, right, it's very much like a marathon. There's always marathons always had 3 portions, if I think about it. An inspiring start, where you feel like, man, I could do anything.
That's the honeymoon phase right there.
Yeah, you're running with these hordes of people, and you're thinking, man, I could take on anybody today. I'm going to do it. I'm going to really, crush this, right? That's the first start. That's the first part, which is the inspiring start. And then there is the messy middle, I think, which is, oh my God, oh, it's not, oh, I'm only at 10 miles. God, I have 16 miles to go.
There's nobody around. The pack is thinned.
That's right. Right. And then you come to this, you get inspired again when you approach the finish line. You're thinking of a strong finish. I always tell people that finishing strong is more important than, the start and the finish are the most critical. because how you finish will set the tone for the next thing,
Yeah.
right? So even writing the book, it was like a marathon.
Mm.
Do you think you'll, do you have plans to write another book? Are you working on something?
I have two more in my head right now.
Nice.
I'm actually working with a dear friend of mine on a book about high stakes speaking, right? High stakes situations. I
Hmm.
mean, I guess this high
What's the
stakes.
context? What's the context of that?
So in Toastmaster, it's this beautiful story. I was working for a startup where we were at a fundraising event. This was earlier in my life,
Mhm.
and after the presentations, right? We all presented, and we are doing the networking event.
Yeah.
One of the investors comes to me and my one of my other colleagues. He's the CEO of the company. The guy says, I love your pitch. I have only one question. Will you ever lie to me?
Mm.
And unfortunately, my CEO, you hesitate for just 1 minute and you're done,
Yeah.
right? Think about that question.
Wow.
Will you
Yeah.
ever lie to me?
If you
That's
even
all I
take
need
a
to know.
pause to think about it,
Yeah.
you're done.
So he paused and he said,
Yeah.
wait,
Done.
because I'm the younger guy, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, I got this. Okay. And he paused and we went, it was
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Good test question.
it's a good test question, but what's more important, what I learned from that is in high stakes situations like that, how do you respond? Your boss comes to you and says, tell me about what's going to happen in the next 2 quarters, right? Or what about this product, roadmap? How will Chat GPT impact our
Yeah.
product?
Yeah.
Your CEO comes and asks you, what are you going to say?
Hmm.
Right? So
What is your
want to help
advice
you-
for that? I mean, when you're put on the spot and somebody
Mm-hmm.
hits you with a question that you weren't expecting and you don't have some canned response for it, it takes it takes a certain ability to calmly and quickly reflect and give an honest answer.
So I'm part of Toastmasters and I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, which is, the most you can get to in Toastmasters, but I'm always learning and growing, I guess. So, but the beautiful part about Toastmasters is there is an ad hoc session in every meeting called Table Topics.
Mm.
We train ourselves to do this, right? To respond to situations where you're asked a question,
Yeah.
right? And then what would you do? One of the clubs I'm part of, we do what would you do sessions,
Hmm.
right? So anyway,
So
an
that's
interesting-
really how you can get good at it, is by practicing.
that's all it is. That's all it is. It's like a muscle, right?
But there's
Because
a
there are
really-
mental models you can use to respond to situations like that.
Mhm.
That's what's so fascinating. There are mental models. There is
Yeah.
a process you go through, right? Pause, reflect. There's steps, like a 4-step process. That's all it is. And you practice,
Interesting.
right?
I was just going to say that and maybe you're achieving the same thing by going through those mental models, but there is also a bit of kind of emotional intelligence that you need to have
Absolutely.
developed in order to. That's a trick question, though. Will you ever lie to me? From an investor,
Yeah.
where the emotional intelligence part of that is you have to be able to relate on a level that is not like, I want something from this person.
Yeah.
This is a whale. You know what I mean? This is a
Yeah,
whale that I'm talking to, and we need his money or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not a trick question from the investor, but it's a trick question for you if you're on a roadshow and you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And you're trying to relate and you're trying to peel away so that you can just have these conversations without trying to sell anything.
Yeah. It's so right on what you said, right? The emotional intelligence is the key in that situation. Anyway, so that's one of the books.
Mhm.
I'm the first draft is actually done, and we are writing it in a beautiful business fable uh, format,
Mhm.
which is basically a fictional company. And by the way, it's from a real situation, but
Hmm.
we have hidden the names and all that to protect the innocent,
Right.
you know. But that's
Schmoogle.
one, and the other one, the other book that I'm thinking of is, for the longest time I've helped scale up companies and startups with partner ecosystems, right? More and more marketplaces. Think about like the things you do on a daily basis, right? 8 out of 10 things are related to marketplaces. Uber, right? You
Okay.
know, your Zelle or PayPal or Venmo or whatever, right?
Amazon.
Amazon, all these are marketplaces
Hmm.
and they're ecosystems. So
Mhm.
how do you use an ecosystem as a startup to scale your enterprise?
Mm. Interesting.
That fascinates me, and I've been doing it for a while, so I'm going to write about it. So
What
That's
size, what
interesting.
size businesses? I'm seeing a lot of this where, again, back to the consultants, but I'm seeing a lot of this kind of, I can help you scale,
yeah,
or I help companies scale from here to here. And there seems to be a threshold, like beyond the 1 million and up, or 2 million and up,
yeah.
where I mean, is that kind of how you're thinking, where you kind of only take on clients that are at a certain threshold before you, is
It,
that
it it's actually not just that, because that's one thing, right? But so for example, think about, is the product mature to allow for an ecosystem
right,
to
right, right,
use
right,
it?
right.
So can partners service the product, right? Because if you can't, then you have no way of supporting that product, even if somebody were to sell it, right, or in a marketplace.
Mm.
Um, is there enough headroom in the margins, right?
Mm,
That so if somebody else were to carry your product, because you're scaling by allowing the ecosystem to help you scale, right? You can't just hire 1,000 people and sell it out there. You need to rely on partnerships and an ecosystem. But in order to do that, you better have enough headroom in your margins to allow for that,
mm,
right?
interesting.
Is your product, is your buyer persona well known? Do you know who you're selling to? Do you know about your product market fit? Because if you don't, it's a costly mistake you're going to make.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just
Well, this has been
examples
super
of,
interesting. So if somebody's interested in finding more about you,
yeah.
how can they learn more? What's your website? Tell us again the
Yes.
title of your book if they're interested in ordering your book.
Thank you. Yeah, so website is satishshenoy.com, just like my name. I actually publish blogs pretty much every so often. I want to get into a more regular kind of cadence, but I do have a website, satishshenoy.com. And then for my book, I have a landing page called Runaway Growth. That's my book, Runaway Growth,
Mhm.
and runawaygrowth.com. And people can order signed copies, which will get to them, and hopefully they enjoy it. So,
Fantastic. And we're looking forward to seeing your next book. Do you have a estimated publication date for the next one?
so the one on high stakes speaking situations is the first manuscript is done, but
Mhm.
my co-author is going through some personal challenges, so I need to kind of, we need to have the right
Sure.
times and all that lined up. So we are thinking early next year.
Okay.
Is when, because it takes a few months to get
Yeah.
ready for launch. But I'm so excited to work with him and get this out there. So
Well,
Fantastic.
great. Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
thank you very much for having me. and delighted. Thank you.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.